I started the divorce because I saw that a spouse who was financially struggling wasn't valuable to me. My world was turned upside down when, on a business trip, my husband suddenly told me he wanted a divorce and that he was already married to his lover. To make things worse, he accused me of marrying him just for his money and demanded that I give up any rights to our property. Facing my indifferent husband, who had always looked down on me since we got married, led to his complete downfall. My name is Lisa. I'm 40 years old. I was raised by a single mother after my father died when I was in kindergarten. Despite the financial hardships, we found happiness as a family of 3. Even now, with a decent job and salary, I still live frugally because of my upbringing. I married Larry, a wealthy man I met through a friend. I was drawn to his kindness and the new possibilities he introduced to me. After we got married, our different views on money and gender roles became clear. Larry imagined a traditional home where I would stay at home, but I was committed to my career and staying financially independent. Before we married, Larry suggested I become a housewife, assuming I would accept traditional roles. However, I made it clear I wanted to keep working until we had kids, pointing out the financial advantages. I managed to convince him, but the reality of balancing work and home responsibilities was hard. Even though I worked full-time, I still had to do all the house chores, leaving us little time together. Meanwhile, Larry, sticking to a traditional husband's role, did nothing at home. He just enjoyed his dinner and relaxed when he got home. Trying to balance work and home life strained our relationship and made me wonder if this was really what marriage was supposed to be like. I was afraid to tell Larry how unhappy I was because I thought he might make me quit my job, even though he didn't help at home. I hoped that having children might improve our relationship, but we were becoming more distant, making me doubt we could start a family. Feeling it was urgent to talk about this, I approached Larry. "Hey, we should think about having kids, right?" I said. "Kids? You're pretty energetic for someone tired from work and chores," he replied. "It's not about that. I want to have children. We haven't been married long, but I'm already over 32. Women can only have children for a certain time, and it's getting harder for me to conceive as I get older. It's almost too late. But we don't need kids. If we have one, you'll expect me to help, right? You know I'm busy with work and won't help with raising children. Isn't it strange to say you won't help with child rearing even before they're born? I plan to raise them alone, but shouldn't you at least want to help? It's your child too. Child rearing is your job. I'm working to support the family, so I definitely won't help with the kids. You'll just complain that I don't help, making me the bad guy. You must have been taught to be poor and have lots of kids since you were born. We're not poor. We don't need kids. End of discussion. Larry abruptly ended the conversation and went to his room. Alone in the living room, I broke down in tears. My desire for children was not only rejected, but he also mocked my upbringing. After this, our relationship got worse quickly. We barely talked, and the hope of having children faded as I continued to balance work and home duties. Taking on significant projects at work, I found myself growing more distant from Larry. One day, as I told him about an upcoming business trip, his unexpected kindness caught me off guard. He wished me well and hinted at a big surprise when I returned. Despite having given up on him, his smile made me hope. But my hope was crushed when I came back. The front door wouldn't open. Larry had changed the locks. His first surprise was announcing our divorce. He claimed to have faked my signature and filed the papers with a friend as a witness. Inside, he handed me a document to sign, giving up my rights to any property division and protesting the false accusations. I insisted that we both give up our rights to any property, and I wanted this to be a public agreement. Larry stubbornly argued and revised the document on his computer, leading to a tense argument as I left the house. He kept mocking me for being poor and even thought about throwing out my things. A few days later, Larry called me in a panic. "What did you do?" he asked. "I haven't done anything. Why are you panicking?" I have many questions. First, I was told to leave the apartment. Oh, you were still living there. That's not allowed. It's a new month. You're trespassing. Trespassing? But it's my house. Are you okay? Did you forget it was a company apartment I rented? I was the leaseholder, so naturally, you can't live there anymore. That's ridiculous. How could you do this? I can't believe you didn't know. I'm not the one who should be accused here. Didn't I tell you that you can't just change the locks of a rental apartment? It's my house. I can change the locks if I want. Didn't you listen? It was my lease. And even if you were the leaseholder, the owner is the apartment manager. You can't change the locks without telling them. Is that so? Also, I ended the lease while you changed the locks. I was allowed to live there until this month. I was planning to return, but now you've unlawfully altered someone else's property, which could be criminal damage. Wait, why did you end it so early? Criminal damage? Is that why the police are at the front door now? I'm too scared to open it. Don't worry, it's probably not for trespassing or criminal damage. It's better to talk to them. Why do I know about the police? Because I reported you for filing the divorce papers yourself. It looks like you've committed crimes like forgery and fraudulent use of a document. Divorce papers can be filed by one person, but only with mutual agreement and personal signatures. Since you forged my signature and the witness, it's clearly a crime. Larry seemed unaware of his guilt. So the divorce papers you submitted are invalid, and your marriage with Laura can't happen either. How do you know about Laura? Did you think I knew nothing? I hired a private detective agency to investigate your affair with Laura. It was a busy time at work, and coordinating with the agency was tough. Plus, you even held a grand wedding ceremony. While I was supposedly on a business trip, I actually took time off work to do some research and prepare documents because I knew about Larry bringing Laura home. It would have been impossible to gather this evidence while working. After I told Larry everything, he was speechless and seemed quite upset, even over the phone. Then he pleaded with me, "Please don't tell Laura I'm divorced." Why would I? There's no such fact to tell. Really, thank you. Are you misunderstanding something? When did you become divorced? That fake divorce paper is invalid, remember? So legally, you're still my husband, not divorced. What? So since you cheated while still legally my husband, Laura needs to pay compensation. I sent the demand for compensation to her house yesterday by express delivery. She didn't know you were married, right? Then I can't withdraw the claim at this point. I knew Laura believed Larry was single, but I deliberately sent the compensation demand. Laura hasn't contacted me yet, so maybe she hasn't received the letter. It should arrive soon. Should you be on the phone with me when you also have to deal with the police? You're busy. I'll ignore the police. I won't be arrested. I'm going to Laura's house now to get the letter back before she or her family can accept it. He then hung up and probably went straight to Laura's house to wait for the postman at the front door. I knew it would be futile because the letter was sent as registered mail to Laura only. Even if he waited for the postman, he couldn't receive it. A few hours later, a disheartened Larry called me. According to him, there was an incident when the postman arrived. Finally, I'll take that envelope. Who are you? You don't live here, right? I'm practically a resident here since I'm married. I have the right to receive the mail. I see, but I can't give you this envelope. It's registered mail for Laura only. What? Give it to me? Absolutely not. If you're so eager, ask Laura for permission. What's going on here? Oh, Larry, what's all this noise? Laura, this is registered mail for you. This man insisted on taking it. Sorry for the disturbance. What's this? A demand for compensation? Larry, you were married? What's going on here? Sorry, it's just, she's an ex-wife from a long time ago. I was embarrassed to say I'm divorced. I'm sorry for keeping it a secret, but isn't it strange? We haven't been dating long, and suddenly there's a demand for compensation. If you were divorced before we started dating, there shouldn't be any problem, right? Well, my ex-wife is crazy. Maybe she's demanding compensation out of spite because I got married. That was the excuse he gave, but his lie was soon exposed. The envelope included a letter I wrote along with my contact information, so Laura called me directly. During that call, I told her about the affair, the invalid divorce, and that they had a wedding ceremony while he was still married to me. Although they had a wedding ceremony, they hadn't submitted the marriage registration yet. Larry wanted to submit it on April Fool's Day, so it was still pending. He probably delayed submitting the marriage registration because he was unsure whether the divorce was finalized. After being exposed, Larry left Laura's house and shamelessly contacted me again. I still had something to tell him, so we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. As soon as I arrived, Larry said, "Lisa, please withdraw the compensation claim. Let's pretend we've been separated for a long time and officially divorced now. I can apologize to Laura for being secretly divorced and maybe cover it up. Do you think I'm desperate to stay married to you? I was going to file for divorce anyway, but since you cheated, you'll pay compensation." "Just trying to extort money from me, huh? Typical of the poor. You have such a poor heart," he said. "You're talking nonsense. Depending on my answer, everything can change. There's still an option where we don't divorce if I say no. You can't reject it, meaning you can't marry Laura and your marital status will be exposed." "Fine, I'll pay the compensation. Just divorce me now. Sign here." Then, about property division. "Property division? How much more do you want to take from me? Compensation should be enough. Remember we agreed to waive property division, right? So let's make it official." "All right, you're not as bad as I thought. Thank you." We then went to a public notary, made a public document for compensation and property division, and then to the city hall to submit the divorce papers, finalizing our divorce. Relieved, I exchanged final words with Larry. "Glad we don't have to divide property." "What are you saying? I'm the one who benefits from that. By the way, do you even have assets after paying me compensation?" "Laura will also claim damages. She mentioned charging you for the wedding expenses." "That's impossible. I'm marrying Laura. She can't claim that we're divorced now, so there should be no problem." "Still living in a fantasy, huh? You committed marriage fraud. You had a wedding while still married. Do you think Laura still believes you?" "Marriage fraud. That's ridiculous. Laura will believe me." "Believe that if you want. I heard from Laura directly. Also, weren't the guests at your wedding paid actors? You still owe them, you know." "You know about that? I haven't paid them yet. What does it matter to you? You could have just taken property division and been better off." "That's what I wanted to tell you. Even if we had divided property, you would have benefited more." "What are you talking about, poor woman? Your family is poor and you only make $230,000 a year, right? Even if you got a raise, it would be barely $30,000. You don't have any property." "You keep calling me poor, so I thought you might be mistaken. Yes, my salary is indeed $145,000, but you know I work for a foreign company, right? It seems you have no interest in me, but I became a director of the American branch. It's not $145,000 per year, but per month. $170,000 per month, so that's an annual income of $2.5 million. You're still bad with numbers. How do you manage to keep a job? It's $2.5 million a year. $2.5 million? That can't be true. Of course, I haven't had the chance to spend such an amount, so I've been saving it for the future. The savings from before our marriage aren't part of the property division, but there's still a considerable amount since our marriage. So I could have received half of that in the property division. You were my wife after all. I'll get the divorce papers corrected. Are you okay? After all the contempt, you think I'd gladly undo the divorce if you have that much money? You don't need to claim compensation, right? It's just a small amount for you. He who laughs at 1 cent will weep for 1 cent. This compensation is for the mental anguish you caused me. I'd like to claim more, honestly. And since we've made it official, make sure to pay it, even in installments. I'll be penniless. Also, don't go back to that apartment. Your belongings should have been moved to your parents' house by now. You thought I had few belongings, but that was because I had already moved most of them. Were you that indifferent to me? I can have so little, so I have to go back to my parents' house. They don't know anything yet, do they? Let me explain. Don't say anything. I already told them everything. It's only fair to explain why we're divorcing. Oh, and your father said never to step over our threshold again, so I have nowhere to go. He collapsed and I left the cafe. Later, I heard he caused trouble at the police station. Despite my advice, he went back to the apartment. He just sat there aimlessly in the empty apartment until the manager called the police, and he was taken away. I'm not sure if it was for obstructing public duties, trespassing, or the falsified divorce papers. Eventually, his parents took responsibility for him. After talking with me and learning about Laura, they decided that apologizing and paying damages to Laura's family came first. They went to Laura's house to apologize, kneeling in front of her family. They settled everything without pressing charges for marriage fraud, even paying for the wedding expenses. I had expected them to sue, so it was disappointing they didn't. I decided to pursue legal action against him for forging the divorce papers. Larry offered a settlement, but I didn't withdraw the lawsuit. I didn't want him to think everything could be solved with money. I wanted him to be convicted and understand the gravity of his actions, even if it cost time and money. I left everything to my lawyer, so it wasn't too burdensome for me. Even though it took time, Larry, exposed for his actions and the marriage fraud, couldn't stay at his company anymore. After being detained by the police and subsequently absent without leave, he was eventually fired. He ended up living at his parents' home, working all day at a relative's construction company. His father took all his earnings, leaving him with no income. I thought his parents wouldn't abandon him, but they were stricter than I expected. They paid my compensation and Laura's compensation, planning to make him work hard until he repaid everything. He lived in a shed-like place with no electricity, receiving only $10 per day for food, deducted from his salary. They planned to kick him out once he'd repaid everything, a harsh fate. After years of hard work, I was offered a position at the head office abroad, so I moved overseas after the divorce was finalized. I worried that Larry might come to me for help or harbor resentment, but moving abroad alleviated those concerns. Initially, I thought work would be my sole companion for a while, but life took an unexpected turn. I soon found myself in a new relationship. I am now dating a foreign executive at our head office. Things have progressed quickly and I'm pregnant with plans to marry soon. I shared everything about my past and my ex-husband with him, and he's been incredibly understanding and supportive. We've discussed our future together in depth. I'll be taking maternity leave soon, and we've planned for me to return to work afterward. He's enthusiastic about taking paternity leave and embracing the role of an active co-parent, which showcases a refreshing cultural perspective compared to what I experienced previously. My past experiences with my ex-husband were challenging, but now I finally feel like I'm on the path to true happiness. I am gaining confidence each day and moving closer to building the happy family I've always dreamed of. The journey here taught me a lot about resilience and the complexity of relationships. Many people endure suffering due to selfish partners, and while divorce isn't always the preferred solution, enduring in silence is certainly not a virtue. It's crucial to recognize that open and honest discussions can pave the way to meaningful resolutions. In some cases, divorce turns out to be a necessary decision for personal growth and well-being. This chapter of my life has reinforced that belief, helping me move forward with a new sense of purpose and hope for the future.